I hope you're gonna enjoy this video. In this video, I'll be giving you some tips, some recommendations to get into reading. I know getting into reading is a little bit overwhelming. Not a little bit, a lot overwhelming because of the fact there are so many authors, there are so many different kinds of books, so many different genres. So it's just really overwhelming to get into it. So I'm your guide today to help you get some tips, get some book recommendations if you want to get into reading. And even if you already are interested in reading, I still think this could be a fun video to get some recommendations out of this, to hear me talk, because obviously I'm amazing. That's all I wanted to say for this intro. I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. I'm gonna start with some tips. So the first tip that I have for you is look into what you like. What is your preferred genre in a movie or a TV series? Because I feel like everyone, or almost everyone, watches TV shows or movies. So if you like horror, if you like thriller, if you like romance, if you like fantasy, if you like Game of Thrones, if you like anything else, if you like anything by a certain genre, if you like nonfiction, if you like documentaries, look into that first of all, and if you know what you like, get into a book that has that same genre, because you already know that you like it, so the chances that you'll enjoy the book as well that has that genre are higher than they are if you pick up a book that you're not certain you will like the genre of, that you will like the storyline of. So look into that first of all, because if you just jump into a random book that you're not certain that you like the storyline of, that you're not certain you would like the characters of. Because if you dive into dark romance when you're not even sure if you like dark romance because you haven't watched anything, if you read something about a stalker, for example, the chances that you'll not like that are higher because you haven't read anything or watched anything like that before. So if you know what you like, I think that's the most important thing. If you know what you like, get into that kind of book. I think that's the easiest way to start reading, to get into something that you already know you like. The excitement is also higher because you already kind of know what the world is going to be like, because you know it's going to be a fantasy world if you pick a fantasy book. You know it's going to be a romance. You know it's going to be about two characters if you read a romance book. You know there's going to be tension. You know there's going to be yearning, that kind of thing. So I think if you have established what you like in that regard, I think reading a book in that same genre is a really good tip for you, because that chances that you'll like that are higher than if you read a book that doesn't really resonate with you. I think a great start to reading is to get into some graphic novels, because graphic novels, you'll feel more accomplished when you finish them because of the fact that it only took you an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, it doesn't matter. Because it took you a shorter amount of time than a full-length novel will take you, because there are pictures. You can get a visual, first of all. You can get a visual of what is being said. So it's kind of more like a movie than a normal novel is, basically. So some recommendations for graphic novels. I have the Heartstopper series right here. You're probably sick and tired of hearing people talk about the Heartstopper series, but it is a really good graphic novel series. If you like romance, I think these graphic novels are a great start because they are popular. So I feel like the desire to read them are also greater because you've heard a lot of people talk about them. So these books are basically about Nick and Charlie. They are high schoolers. Charlie already knows that he isn't straight, and Nick is basically kind of figuring it out in this series. So it does have some great representation, also some triggers, so check trigger warnings for this series, but I can show you a little bit of an example. So these are what the pictures look like. There is text, but there isn't a load of text, so you can read these very quickly. For me, one of these books took me an hour to read. So each of these books, hour to read, and that is as a fast reader, so know that, but I just think these are very easy to read. I also have another recommendation. I haven't read them, but I've heard good things about them. So it's the Tea Dragon Society. I'm not sure what the author is, but again, I'll put a picture up here. So this is also a graphic novel series. These are very short. I think they're about 100 pages each. I don't know what genre it is. I think it's like kind of a fantasy, maybe a little bit of romance, but I'm not sure. Look into that if you want. And if you're not interested in graphic novels, if you just want to get into books, choose a novella or a shorter read, because that way, again, you'll feel accomplished when you've read it, and you'll still feel accomplished when you've read a full-length novel. But I think the chances that you'll stop reading a full-length novel are higher than that you'll stop reading a shorter book, because of the fact that it's shorter and it's easier to finish. Some short book recommendations that I have for you. I have some different genres, so I will talk you through them. We have the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. This is a full series, 5 books, but each book is about 130 pages long. I think the longest book in the series is 150, maybe 170 pages. So it's still not long at all. So these are just easy to read, kind of thrillery, mystery, suspense books. It's basically about this female serial killer. She gets into a relationship with this FBI agent who is working on her case. There's a lot of suspense because when is he gonna find out that she's the serial killer? What is gonna happen next, you know? Is he gonna catch her? That kind of stuff. It's just really interesting, and it's short, so it's easy to get through. Then the next rec I have for you, this is just a general romance series, so it's Loath to Love You by Ali Hazelwood. This is 3 books in 1 book, so this is the full book, but there are 3 books in it. The books are called Stuck With You. That is the second book, I think. Under One Roof is the first book. Stuck With You and Below Zero. So the first book is about two people. They move into an apartment and they kind of have this enemy situation going on, but slowly they start falling in love, I guess. Then the second book, Stuck With You, is again about 2 enemies and they are stuck in an elevator together and they kind of talk about the past that they have and why they started hating each other, and that is when they kind of fall in love, I guess. And then we also have Below Zero, which I don't really remember what it is, but it's basically about the scientists. All of these books are about scientists, by the way. That is the series. I really enjoyed it. I read them separately. You can buy the whole book, and so you have all the stories together. The next recommendation for a short book that I have is Killjoy by Holly Jackson. This is part of a series. So the series is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I have the series right here. These are full-length novels, but you could, if you don't enjoy this little novella, or if you've noticed that this just isn't your thing, if this isn't your preferred genre, you can stop here because this doesn't spoil anything for the rest of the books. This is just an introduction into the life of the characters that we're following in this series. So this is about a murder mystery party. Our main character, Pip, who's also the main character in the rest of the books, is kind of figuring out this murder, and it's really interesting to read about because it's not a real murder, but it's still interesting because it's funny. There's some comedy in it. It's young adult, so it's easier to read than a new adult or an adult book. But that was the recommendation for this. Then another short book that I really enjoyed was Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This is a horror. If you like a little bit of a gory horror movie, it's obviously you can't see what is happening in this case because you're reading it, but you can see it in your head, obviously. I cannot say much about it, but it's basically about these 2 people. They meet at this farmer's market. So Rosemary meets Ash, and Rosemary quickly figures out that Ash isn't what she seems to be. She says some things, she does some things where she's like, it's kind of suspicious. So it's very short. It's only 200 pages, so it's very easy to get through. And the ending, crazy. So I think this would be a good recommendation if you enjoy horror. If you enjoy romance, kind of a weird romance, because I don't have any short stories for the rest that have like normal romance, but this is dark romance. So it's Death's Obsession by Vina St. Graves. I read this yesterday. I finished it yesterday and I really enjoyed it. This is basically about this girl and she attracts the attention of Death, and Death basically becomes obsessed with her. She's like kind of denying the fact that Death is real. She's like, okay, this cannot be, but there's evidence that shit is happening. She gets notes that have been written by Death that say some unhinged things. No one believes her really when she says that someone is doing this to her, and it's a romance between Death and her because he kind of comes into her dreams and they fuck. Yeah, that's basically the story. So there is a lot of smut, so if you're not into that, I wouldn't read this because this is a lot of smut. But it is really interesting. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. Next tip that I have is books with short chapters. So a book may be long, but it does have short chapters. So you can kind of stop reading whenever you wish because the chapters are only like 2 to 5 to 6 pages long, basically. Also, I find that it works for me, especially because every time that I pick up a book that has short chapters, I'll be like, okay, 1 more chapter, okay, 1 more chapter, 1 more chapter, until I've basically read half of the book or maybe the whole book within a short amount of time. First recommendation that I have for that is Eeny Meeny. This is by MJ Arledge. I would recommend this whole series because this whole series has short chapters. I've only read the first 3 books in the series, but I enjoyed all of them really much. Eeny Meeny is kind of like a Criminal Minds episode or a Saw movie. So it's basically about this person. They put, I don't want to spill the gender because that way you will know what gender it is and it's kind of spoiled it. This person, they will put these 2 people in this room together and they can only get out if they kill each other. This does have more than 400 pages, 421 pages, but there are 117 chapters in this book. So the chapters are, I think, a maximum of 5 pages long, not even 5 pages maybe. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This is basically about this woman, she shot her husband and now she hasn't talked again. She is in this psych ward, and she hasn't talked since she murdered her husband. And now this psychologist is coming into the psych ward to kind of get her to talk, to tell him what has really happened on that day 6 years ago. 6 years ago, it says on the back. And the plot twist is so unexpected, and I didn't expect it at all. I was so shocked. I was flabbergasted. If you have guessed this plot twist, I applaud you, because that is an accomplishment. Another short book that I have indeed read, The Inheritance Games. I personally didn't really love this book. I gave it 3 stars. It was still a fine book, but I didn't really love it. But I do know a lot of people, a whole lot of people that really love this series, this book. These chapters are so short. They are a maximum of, I think, like 3-4 pages. Even shorter than chapters in Eeny Meeny. This is basically about Avery. She inherits basically a lot by this man that she doesn't even know. I think she has to live in this house with these five brothers, I don't know, to get this inheritance, I think. There's a romance going on. It's a mystery of why is she the one that gets the inheritance and not his sons or grandsons. Honestly, it was a really fun time, but just not as good as I heard it was. But I did really enjoy the Natural series, also by this author. I would recommend this series more, but I do want to reread The Inheritance Games and read the rest of the series because of the fact that I heard that it's good and that I've enjoyed this series as much as I did, so I still want to reread it, but we'll see about that then. Another book with short chapters is A Diary of Blood by S.T. Gibson, sorry. This is basically about Dracula's bride. So this story follows the moment that Dracula kind of makes her his wife. We're following them through the years. We're following the toxicity of the relationship through the years. I put this off for so long, then I suddenly picked it up because I felt the urge to, and I completely fell in love with it. It's just really good. The chapters are short, so it doesn't say that it's a chapter. It only says this, but, so this is a chapter. So these are the pages, so that's a chapter. So only a few pages, only like 5 pages. Okay, now we're just getting into some general recommendations that don't have a specific theme to it, only that they're in the same genre. So the first one that we have is romance, the romance section, because my favorite genre is romance. We have The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. I recently read this, and this does have a little bit of a mystery, so I think that is really cool. It isn't really like thrilling or something, but it's just like a fun little mystery going on. It's basically about this girl. She moves into this pumpkin spice cafe. So she has an apartment above the Pumpkin Spice Cafe. Her aunt gives it to her, so she has to basically continue this business that her aunt started up. She has to run this coffee shop, and it's just very cozy. It's set in fall, and there's a little mystery because of the fact that she hears scratching at the door, and she hears like this howling, she hears these other things, so she has to figure out what is doing that. She kind of asks this grumpy farmer in this town to help her with that, and that is where the romance comes in. So it's just a really fun time, and it was just really charming to me. I just really liked it. The next books that I'll recommend to you are a little bit of a shorter read, but I didn't want to add them in the short book section because they are more than 200 pages, but they are still under 300 pages. So it's Wicked Villains by Katie Roberts. I don't know what these books are called separately, but I'll put a picture up here. I don't remember much of it, but it's basically like fairy tale retelling / reimaginings. It's not fancy, but it is like fairy tale reimaginings in form of a darker romance. We follow Aladdin, for example, but then the villain in Aladdin. We follow Ursula from Little Mermaid. Now we have a holiday romance. This is also a little bit of a shorter read, but I didn't want to add it in the short books because it isn't that short. It's Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. So this is a Christmas novella basically about this interior designer. I don't know what it's called, but like this window in a shop that has some decorations, and she doesn't think it's good. So she talks to this guy and is like, this doesn't look good, this doesn't look good, I would change this, I would change this, and he turns out to be the owner of the store. So he hires her to redecorate the front window. I don't know what it's called, like the window decorations, you know? They have a romance together. It was just a really fun time. It isn't too serious at all, and I know a lot of people that don't like Tessa Bailey. I personally really do, and this was just a fun holiday kind of little book. Next, we have The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. This is also kind of a holiday novella, but not a Christmas novella. This is a Halloween novella, but Halloween is also a holiday, I think. So, this is about this girl. She curses her ex, so the ex-hex. She curses her ex, and I don't really remember what she cursed him with, but basically he moves back to this town. He has been cursed, and she's like, oh shit, I put a revenge curse on him, basically. And now he still has this curse. I didn't think it would work. She has to figure out how to reverse this curse and to get it out of him, or off of him, basically, and to save this town, because this curse is affecting this town as well. It's just really cute. It's kind of a cringe time, but it's like a really, really fun time. This is also a series. The Wedding Witch is the 3rd book that has just come out. I'll read that when it's Christmas, and I'm really excited about that. This was a fun time. I gave it 4 stars, and I read it, I think, like 2-3 years ago. Those were my romance recommendations. Now we have some fantasy recommendations, because of course we cannot finish this video without some fantasy recommendations. And because of the fact that I already gave quite some thriller, horror recommendations previously, I will not do a horror/thriller section or mystery section, because I don't read that many, and the ones that I've already recommended are basically all of the ones that I wanted to recommend. So, The Time I Got Drunk and Saved the Demon. Here's the thing, this is a fantasy romance, so it's a romance-y, but it's just so easy to read. It's really fun. It's kind of hilarious, honestly. Basically, the title already says what it's about. It's about this girl. She got drunk, she saw this demon getting attacked, I think, or like dying. So she ends up saving him, and he wants to repay her, I think, or something. They go on this adventure together, and it's just a really, really fun time. It was so cute. It was adorable. It's kind of like a funny time as well. It was cute. I liked it. But I wouldn't classify it as a pure fantasy, because the fantasy aspects are lower than the romance aspects, but because I don't read that many high fantasies, I wanted to add it in the fantasy section, because I still wanted to have a fantasy section. I cannot do a video without recommending this book. It's not even funny. So we have The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. This is my favorite book of all time, if you didn't already know this. I have read this book 9 times. Again, favorite book of all time. It's just so good. It's about Alessandra, and Alessandra has always been the second choice. She is the second daughter. So she is done with that. She's done with that. She wants to be the first choice. She wants to have power, because she has never had real power. So she decides she's going to make the king marry her. She's going to marry the king. She's going to pretend she's in love with him so that he wants to marry her. When she marries him, she is going to kill him. And when she kills him, she's going to take his kingdom for herself. And obviously it's romance between these 2 characters about Callias and Alessandra. Love interest and the main character in this book. The main character is Alessandra, but it's kind of a lot of drama. Not a lot, in theory, happens in this book, but it was just such a fun time. Every time that I read it, I still get so fucking giddy. These characters are a little bit twisted, though. If you're up for that, totally do it. It's still YA, so it isn't like a dark, dark romance, but it's like a darker romance. People also classify this as a Slytherin romance, and I think I find myself in that. Then the last recommendation I have for you is The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli. I also think this is easier to pick up because it has gotten a lot of hype and a lot of people love this book. But this is also a fantasy romance. This is about this witch and this witch hunter. In this town, in the city, magic isn't allowed. So when she casts magic, this symbol comes up above where she casts magic, and it's basically the Crimson Moth. So that's why I call it the Crimson Moth, because she's the Crimson Moth. And she's also in hiding because she's a witch, but she's also like this noble woman, and she has to pretend that she's not a witch. She has to pretend that she's like, oh my god, witches are evil, while she's also a witch. And then she gets in a romance with this witch hunter who is hunting her. And there's a lot of close calls where he almost figures out that she is who she is. The romance is very cute, very pure. I really enjoyed this book. And the ending of it really, really had a good setup for the next book. And it's a duology, so it's also not too long to read. But I can definitely see myself rereading this book as well. So those were all of the recommendations, to all of the tips that I wanted to give you. I hope you found some tips, found some recommendations. Hope you enjoyed this video overall. If you want to see more of me, like this video and subscribe. All my links are in my description, my Goodreads, my Amazon wishlist, the music that I used in this video. And I hope I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!